Betting is your home for picks, props, and futures for tonight's action. Bettor Sports Betting wants to know what picks you're playing tonight. Tell us in the live chat on YouTube, Twitter, and the Bettor Sports Network app. This is Bettor Sports Betting with Fantasy Alarm's Dan Servodidio.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome in here to the Bettor Sports Betting Show on Bettor Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm. Appreciate everyone joining here on a Monday afternoon. I got Jon Impemba with me here on a Monday filling in. What's up, John?
Dan, yeah, I'm doing pretty well. It is Fantasy Football Expo week this week. So Mr. Bender's a little busy, obviously getting ready for the Fantasy Football Expo out in Canton, Ohio. So you'll have me 3 times this week, today, tomorrow, and Friday. I'll be there.
The more the better. The more the better. I love it. We'll be diving into a bunch of different sports betting stuff on this show, but also all week. So I'm glad to have you on because now's the time with the calendar in August. We can start diving more into NFL, and I'll be excited to talk some college football. I'll throw out some college football bets out for the people looking to get in. We got college football is always
week 0, a couple weeks away, man.
Yeah, the week 0 always starts early in the NFL. It kind of sneaks up on people, but I've been diving in. We got a USC as massive favorites on that week 0 slate, so that'll be cool to see Caleb Williams, future fantasy football stud, hopefully. So, yeah, it'd be cool to see him. But
Heisman bets in now, right?
Right. That's the big debate. I was on a show last week where they asked me about just the thought of Caleb Williams and his Heisman, but it was like no one has won back-to-back Heismans in a while. So I know he won it last year. He's the favorite this year, but it's just kind of the thing. You got to bet against it. Try to pick someone else. But yeah, he'll surely be the number 1 pick in the draft either way. So that'll be cool to see where he lands. But today on the show, we have plenty of MLB picks for you for Monday night. We got almost a full slate of games. A lot of teams in action here. We only got one afternoon game starting up soon here, Dodgers and Padres. But a bunch of games to get to tonight. So we'll give out some picks, some player props that me and John are on. Wanted to start things off, though, kind of taking stock of where the MLB playoff picture stands right now, because last week me and Howard on a show kind of broke down some of the odds, post-trade deadline odds of what moves did people make that either boosted or kind of hurt their playoff odds. I know one team that just kind of, I was just saying bet against them. I know it's juicy at this point, but take the Twins to win that AL Central after the Guardians basically did nothing and gave away guys at the deadline. And now it's even trending more in that direction. So, that the AL Central won't be one we really touch on today, but we got a bunch of playoff races, wild card for sure, but also some interesting division races right now. Let's start in the NL Central, because over the past week, we've had a lot of movement, not only in the standings, but the odds here. And the Brewers right now on DraftKings, -115, betting favorites to win that NL Central. The Cubs and the Cubs at +210 and the Reds at +360. And right now in the standings, the Brewers are leading right now by just a game and a half over both the Reds and the Cubs. So it's very fluid. And this could all change in a week, but right now, if you're looking to bet on the Reds or the Cubs, there's definitely some plus money opportunity there for you. I'll be honest. Last week we broke down this, me and Howard, and I said, I like the Brewers to win this division. I would bet against the Reds to make the playoffs. I would say no for them to make the playoffs, and it was pretty even odds for them not to make it. But the Cubs here kind of sneaking up, man. I mean, they just keep winning games. And at this point, we got to take them seriously. I mean, only a game and a half back of the division here. How do you see this division shaking out the rest of the way?
Yeah, I mean, obviously getting Brandon Woodruff back is huge for the Brewers. We saw him return and dominate, in a losing effort, Pittsburgh the other day, about 9 strikeouts in 5 innings for him, just stepping right back on the mound and looked as good as he's been. So getting that Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff 1-2 punch back in line. Freddie Peralta will pitch tonight. We'll see if he can kind of keep some of his hot stretches running right now. We know the strikeout upside with him. That offense is going to be the biggest tell, right? There's so many guys in that lineup that are super swing and miss heavy. There's obviously Christian Yelich is having a nice season. They call up Sam Frelick, but I mean, up and down outside of, William Castillo as well. or Contreras.
Contreras.
Yeah. Outside of them, there's a lot of guys in that lineup that are streaky hitters that I think could go cold in a playoff series. The Reds are kind of interesting as a dark horse in the sense that they're supposed to be getting back both Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo in the coming weeks. So, I mean, that's a team that really needs some pop at pitching, and those are two of their more electric young arms. So if those guys come up from the IL and rehab fine and they're good to go, like they could certainly, vastly improve their pitching rotation. For the Cubs, for me, they probably have the best offense up and down right now after they made the moves that they made. John McCandelario's come up and been a lightning rod for them. But that's another one where pitching outside of Steele feels like suspect. Having to throw Tyon and Hendricks out there every 5 days isn't really good for their long-term prospects. So I still think this is a wide open division, honestly. I think the Reds obviously are running out of steam a little bit as some of their younger guys sort of hit some walls, but if they do get good pitching back and Lodolo comes up and Green comes back and those guys are electric, they could go on a little run at the end, and that may be all what it takes to claim this division.
Yeah, and whatever team doesn't make the division, there's still, the wild card is up for grabs there because we got the Cubs and Reds both tied, as I mentioned, in the division, but also tied for that last wild card spot. The Giants and Phillies are the first two teams, but only a half a game ahead of the Marlins in the wild card, and the Diamondbacks are a game and a half back. The Padres 3 games back. That's basically the chunk of teams. So if one of the teams doesn't make the win the Central, we should have at least one of them make the wild card, I would think. It sounds like you're higher on the Reds. I've been kind of soured on them because of the fact that they didn't make any moves at the deadline. I know you mentioned Lodolo and Green coming back is huge for them for that pitching staff, but I would have loved to see them make add a middle of the rotation starter, or maybe add another bat for that, that young offense that, as you mentioned, just kind of hitting some walls. Teams are starting to figure out how to get them out. And they've been, 3-7 in their last 10 games coming in here, have been very inconsistent since the All-Star break. So they're a team that's been trending down, but then the Cubs have just been their offense. You said it. This is a team totals I've been hammering on this show because they're not slowing down. Win or lose, their offense is there. The pitching is the big concern. They rely, too much on some of those back end guys like Tyon, Hendricks. You think maybe the veteran aspect of it would kind of maybe give them a slight advantage in the second half over like the young Reds rotation, but sometimes they're just like getting shelled.
Well, sometimes it's like you're too young to know better, right? Sort of thing. So it's like, Green and Lodolo go out there. They don't really have to manage their innings at this point because they've missed 2 months of the season, throwing. So they can kind of just release and let those guys go. Again, those guys are also very aggro. So, Green can come back and be as wild and inconsistent as he was and sinks that team. But we've also seen him go out there and strike out like 13 in 4 innings, So like they have that crazy upside, those two guys here. So I think it's wide open because all 3 of those teams at the top have so much, are not perfect teams. There's flaws up and down. I think the lineup for the Brewers have some questions. I think the pitching staff for the Cubs have some issues. And then the Reds maybe like top to bottom from like ceiling talent might have the best top to bottom, but they're all too young. They're all too green to know. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays.
And if you haven't already, go check out the MLB injury report article that we have up on Fantasy Alarm right now, because Fensty breaks down some of the injuries that affect some of these teams. And, I knew like Jonathan India has been out. So we'll see when he's coming back or how much longer he'll be back, but that's kind of an absence. And then Jake Fraley just fractured his toe as well. So like that's a tough injury for them to try to deal with now, to an offense that's been pretty inconsistent anyway lately.
He's a leading home run guy. Leading RBI guy too. So losing him to the toe. The Reds are a team that are kind of loaded too. So they were, some of these injuries are actually making it easier on their lineup decisions because they had so many guys to play so few positions. So they're able to sort of slot in, they'll play Benson now more frequently. Steer can play in the outfield. CES now starts regularly at third for them. So, McLean moves over to second. It kind of reset their lineup because they had so much talent that they couldn't always play all of them. They called back up Fairchild. They have Senzel, so they're not short on depth, that Reds team.
I totally forgot about Nick Senzel too.
Yeah,
that guy just went from being like a top prospect to just kind of like a bench piece for the Reds now, with all their young talent coming up now.
Yep.
But yeah, so when you look at other odds to make the playoffs, this was earlier today before this Padres-Dodgers game started up. The Cubs were at plus 100 to make the playoffs, and no is at minus 120. So which changed a lot from last week. I think they were at like plus 300 to make the playoffs, and juiced pretty heavily to no. But they, as I mentioned, they just keep winning games here.
Yeah.
And they got a game today against who are they playing today? The Mets.
Today.
Yeah, the Mets today.
Interesting matchup for them because Kodai Senga's pitching for New York, and Senga's home road splits are just ridiculous this year. He's been so good at home. So it's like what wins out? Because Senga just looked awful against Kansas City in his last start. Now he's facing one of the hottest offenses in baseball, but it's in a place where he has been lights out. So whatever wins tonight will be interesting to see.
Well, a little tease there. I got to pick maybe fading Senga kind of back in the Cubs there a little bit later. So I'll give that pick out. But I think there's a little bit worry for Senga today, just based on some of the deeper numbers when you look at it for his insane home splits. But you saw the odds flash up there. The Cubs, like I mentioned, their odds. But, I mentioned that this NL wildcard race. We still got the Marlins and the Padres, the Diamondbacks too. But the two teams that are just kind of, the Padres, we expected to start making a push here. They've slowly made up ground, but still kind of a little bit far back. But the Marlins now, plus 190, yes, to make the playoffs, but no is minus 225 now, as they've kind of gone on a skid as well with the Reds. Their team, I know they added Jake Berger and Josh Bell, but it'll be nice to see Yuri Perez now back in the Marlins rotation. Yeah, tonight. So that'll be good for them. Maybe they start picking it up. But if I'm just kind of looking this NL wildcard picture, I feel most confident about the Cubs and the Padres to still make up ground. I'd probably bet against. I'm not, betting the minus 225 on the Marlins, but I think the Padres still have a path to get to the playoffs, and you can get them at plus 170 to make the playoffs. I think that's an interesting bet. Now that they're, their offense has been better. Their pitching is very up and down still, but I think
most expensive payroll to miss a playoffs. Maybe I mean, like the Yankees, I mean, you look at that lineup beginning of the year, and you're like, man, Tatis and Bogarts and Soto and Machado. It's like, how do they miss? And then they played so bad beginning of this year. Joe Musgrove's pitched okay. Darvish hasn't really been that great for them, and they've really struggled, I think, cementing sort of the second half of that rotation for them as well. Lugo's pitched really well for them of late, which is a good pick-me-up for them. But after that, they've struggled. They traded for Rich Hill. He was terrible, the other day. So like they need some help there as well.
Yeah, and then the Diamondbacks have just kind of fallen off a little bit. They made some weird moves at the deadline because they got Paul Sewald.
And then they bought that. They sort of sold and bought at the same time.
Yeah, they trade away Andrew Chafin, who I thought was a good bullpen arm for them. But they got Sewald. They trade away Chafin. They got a couple bats, right? Jace Peterson and someone else. But it wasn't like Tommy Pham, as well. So weird deadline for them, kind of buyers and sellers at the same time.
Yeah, they got Merrill Kelly back, which is good for them. Again, just getting another top tier starter after Gallen, because that was another team where like once he got past Zach Allen, who hadn't really been all that great since the All-Star break, it was just a rotation of Tommy Henry and things like that, Ryan Nelson, and those aren't at the moment major league quality caliber pitchers. So their staff was not doing them any favors there. Corbin Carroll, I think, is in like a 2 for 20 slump, something like that. So he's really starting to go down a little bit. So as that they got shut down by Dallas Keuchel the other day, for crying out loud. So as they slump, that team's going down with it. So
and Ketel Marte, I didn't realize he hurt his quad last game over the weekend. and had to be pulled from the game early. But we'll see if he's back, how serious that is. But like if he's out and then Carroll's slumping like that, that they were relying on those guys at the top of the lineup for
a little breaking Mets news here. Brett Beatty optioned AAA. So
oh wow,
sending down Beatty.
The Mets are just
you're not going anywhere, Mets. Why are you sending down Brett Beatty? Just let him play through whatever he's going with.
Oh man, we talked about it last week at the trade deadline, but the fact that they sell away Scherzer and Verlander and are paying for majority of those contracts, and it's it's a tough look for them. They're definitely, and then there was some quotes that they're already looking towards not even next season, like 2 years from now is what they're kind of targeting.
They went all in for a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
Like that was what happened. They signed Lindor, they get Scherzer, they get Verlander, they let go of DeGrom. And then they're like, oh, this team isn't winning. Just blow it up. So.
Yeah. And they weren't even, when the trade deadline happened, they weren't too far back. They were like a similar spot as the Padres. They could have, if they wanted to make moves and add, they could have, but they went in the other direction.
I mean, if you're the Angels and the Red Sox right now, you're probably wondering what you did, because the Angels we're going all in, lost 6 straight games, under 500, basically just played themselves out of the playoffs and still have Ohtani, who's probably gone now. And then the Red Sox, in a must-win series against the Blue Jays, go in and get swept at home, get obliterated on Sunday. And the glaring issue in that game, that series for me, was they had to use 2 opener games. Saturday and Sunday were both opener games because Chaim Bloom didn't go out and get a back-end rotation starter. Could have traded the Phillies got Michael Lorenzen for a non-top 100 prospect. They gave up their number 5 organizational prospect, the middle infielder, but he's not a top 100 prospect. Red Sox could have easily given up one of their plethora of middle infield prospects they have in their system, because basically consistently Chaim Bloom is drafting shortstops in the draft for the last 4 years. They could have traded someone like Nick York, maybe even, and gotten Lorenz in there, and you wouldn't have had to deal with a Bernardino, whoever the heck, Chris Murphy, I think they had yesterday, get lit up. So the Red Sox are angry people today in the media for Boston.
And Lorenzen had a really good first start for the Phillies.
Yeah, he was free. They didn't give up really anything for him. So frustrating.
At least Trevor Story's coming back, right?
Yeah, so Story wanted to stay and finish off his rehab stint. So I think he has another game, and he could join the team later this week. So
okay. So hopefully that'll give a boost. But let's shift gears now to the AL before we give out some picks for tonight, and just talk through some of these odds for the AL. And looking at the AL West, I mean, it's Rangers Astros, right? And it's pretty, betting odds are -120 Rangers, +125 Astros, but pretty even, could go either way here. And I said last week after the deadline, I liked, me and Howard both liked what the Rangers did, but I felt a little bit better about the Astros and just kind of adding some of their, fringe pieces, but also just, the Verlander trade for them, I thought was, in the grand scheme of things, just, I think, a better move than what Scherzer is right now. I liked Verlander at multiple points this season than Scherzer. But just in general, I think there's great value here to bet on the Astros, because the Rangers, I mentioned, Fence's injury report really breaks some of these down, but Josh Jung is a big injury now for them. He has a fractured thumb.
Yep.
And he probably won't be back until September at some point. This is a big loss. Corey Seager has been, battling some injuries here and there. He's back, but he could easily be out again at some point soon.
Jonah Heim's going to return, but only hit from one side of the plate. So
Jonah Heim is coming back, but Eovaldi's out for them right now. I have a little bit of worries about the Rangers. Obviously, they're good still, but the Astros just kind of, I think people are kind of sleeping on them to probably repeat as AL champs. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at that as the least.
Yeah, I agree. I would much rather take the Astros in that bet than Texas at this point. Again, for me, it also just goes down back to rotation. Sure, I think both lineups are pretty strong. But Houston got Yordan Alvarez back over the last couple of weeks. Yeah. He's finally starting to kind of heat back up. They got Altuve back. Travis McCormick continues to rake at the plate there. And then you say they add in a Verlander who pitched really well, even though losing to the Yankees. Framber threw the no-no in his last start. They got Urquidy back. It wasn't a great outing for him, but just like another guy to put into that rotation for them and mix and match plays. They still have Javier in their rotation in the middle, and that kind of slots him, I think, a little better as like a 3-4 than having to rely on him to be a 2 for them. And then if you look at the pitching for the Rangers, like you said, like after Max, there's a lot of questions there. John Gray has had his struggles in the second half. Evaldi's hurt. Dane Dunning, random 11 strikeout game against the White Sox, but like you're not going to get those games out of Dane Dunning all that often. So
he's had some. I've faded him on this Best Bet show because like he's had some regression numbers coming just because he's kind of pitching well above what his real talent is. I think.
It's a ground ball guy that doesn't strike anybody out, but he has 2 games this year of double-digit strikeouts. So
weird.
Weird, just anomalies. Happy that we played him in DFS that night against the White Sox.
Go.
So it was a good night for us over there.
Yeah, Dunning on the mound tonight for the Rangers. Looking at the outside of the the AL Central, because we do have the Astros right now, even though they're behind the Rangers, they are a game up in that wild card. It's basically, I feel like. Unless we see something from the Rangers and Astros, where they start falling down, it's basically between the Blue Jays and the Mariners for that second spot. Because you mentioned the Red Sox starting to slump. I mean, we'll see if they can, pick it back up. But the Yankees don't offer much confidence, and then 4.5 games back of the Blue Jays. But the Mariners, I mean, really interesting because I didn't think they would really be in it. But they've started to win games here, 8-2 in their last 10 games. As you see there on the screen, and just 2.5 games back of the Blue Jays. The Mariners are just quietly hanging around here, and right now on DraftKings, plus 180 to make the playoffs are the Mariners. No is minus 210 to not make the playoffs, but I mean, plus 180 is a decent shot if you want to take a chance on them. I know that they have like a lot of things that you don't really like in a playoff team, like the rotation isn't what you would like right now. I think relying too much on some of these young guys, but
I think the top end talent for them is there with the rotation, but they're just inexperienced, right? Like Kirby and of course now I'm blanking on the other Gilbert, like they're very good starting pitchers, right? They're just not tested yet. But you have Castillo kind of at the top there. But if you go into a playoff series where you got to face those 3 guys, like
that's a really good one.
All 3 of them could shut down an opposing team. So I kind of like Seattle. What was holding Seattle back for so long was their offense. Julio Rodriguez was non-existent for the majority of the season until the last month. Eugenio Suarez, kind of the same thing. So Teoscar Hernandez can literally only hit lefties. So there's just a lot of inconsistencies with their lineup. Ty France, another guy that they had a big year last year, slow this year. They just called up Marlowe. He's had a couple of good games for them. But I don't know what the expectations are for him as like a long-term play in their lineup. They made some moves around their infield. Cal Raleigh continues to hit for some power. Tom Murphy, they're double catchering most nights because Murphy's like been one of their best hitters. So the lineup, I think, leaves a lot to be desired for them. But if they start clicking, especially if Rodriguez looks like the player from last year, the way he's been the last month, I do think going into a playoff series, having to look down Castillo, Kirby, and Gilbert could be a problem for teams.
Yeah, I mean, I feel better about the Mariners in a playoff series than the Blue Jays, honestly, because the Blue Jays. I mean, you mentioned the Mariners. I mean, their offense, like you look at like the top, strikeout leaders. Their team just strikes out a ton. Obviously against full season, but. They made a weird trade deadline moves because they kept Teoscar Hernandez. Everyone thought he was going to be gone. It seemed like he would be traded at some point, but they keep him around. But they trade away their closer, Paul Sewald. So that's interesting. And just I don't know, kind of a weird situation. But the Blue Jays just I don't know, they've just like kind of underperformed to my expectations this season. Part of that's the pitching, but part of that's just kind of the offense outside of, Vlad is like, you don't know what you're going to get.
Vlad. So Vlad's been a little bit snake bitten. He has I think I saw the stat the other day. He has the most hard hit baseballs in baseball this year. However, that metric is, but like his batting average in balls in play or something like that is like mid, so he's just getting super unlucky. when he's making that hard contact. But the rest of the line, I mean, Springer had to be moved down the lineup. He was on like an 0 for 30 stretch.
Springer's been so disappointing this year.
Whit Merrifield's been a gem for them. That's been great. Brendan Belt, risen from the dead, has been able to produce for a little bit. Dalton Varshaw's been terrible, but starting to turn it around a little bit. But after Gossman, though, their pitching has been so bad. Yeah. So, Manoah, we know his struggles, obviously. They just got Rue back, and we'll see if he can.
He got rocked by the Orioles.
Yeah, exactly. His first start back there. So that's a team that has a good bullpen, but their starting pitching is suspect, and their hitting I think will get dominated by good pitching the way they've performed this year. So Toronto more of a pretender, I think, for me, if they make the playoffs.
Okay. So, yeah, I guess we both like the Mariners plus 180 to take a chance on them to make the playoffs. And then the last team we gotta touch on, because the Angels, we've talked about this team for a lot on this show, especially on the deadline, keeping Ohtani around, made some, small moves to get Grichuk and CJ Cron and Lucas Giolito. But right now, DraftKings just not sold on them. Plus 2,000 to make the playoffs right now. And rightfully so, because in the wild card standings, they are 7 games back of the Blue Jays right now. And you mentioned they've lost a bunch here, 2-8 in their last 10 games. It's, I thought they would be, kind of where the Mariners are right now, 2.5 games back at this point, based on what the moves they made. I don't know. What's your vibe on them? Are they worth it all, taking a chance on them to make a late push here? Plus 2,000 to make the playoffs.
Listen, I think their lineup is actually pretty good with the moves that they made, getting Cron and Grichuk and Moustakas, and Drury just came back for them, and they'll get Mike Trout back at some point soon.
You'd think.
I just don't know about that rotation. I was not a Lucas Giolito guy. I know they made that trade. I was like, oh, Giolito. I was like, sure, but go look at his FanGraph numbers, and he was sitting there with like a 4.6 FIP, and he's kind of getting a little bit lucky. And then what happens? His first start, granted, not exactly the best matchup, having to go up against the Atlanta Braves, 9 runs in 3 2/3 innings, and I'm like, yeah, that's sure, he's not that bad, but he also wasn't really that good this year. So I didn't think Giolito was going to be the savior for that organization, but I do think their offense is fine. I mean, Chase Silseth had 12 strikeouts last night, and they lost the game. So, there's just a lot of inconsistency still there with that team. But Trout will get him, will be better. But I don't think their rotation's really any great shakes, especially if Ohtani has to keep leaving games due to hand cramping. That's not going to do them any good. So, yeah, I would not place the bet. Actually, I lied. At plus 2,000, I probably would place a bet, but
put $5 on it or something.
Yeah, why not, right? But it's a long shot for a reason.
All right. I think I'm a little bit down on them now, because it hasn't gone in the direction I thought it would. If they, like I said, if they were where the Mariners stand right now, obviously those odds wouldn't be as long, but I that's kind of where I thought maybe a week ago, I thought they'd start making a push, but it's gone in the wrong direction. Mm-hmm. All right, let's get to some bets tonight. And before we do, I just want to remind you guys, if you haven't already, start your free 7-day trial of Fantasy Alarm's All-Pro subscription and get the Fantasy Football Draft Guide and cheat sheet for free. Go to fantasyalarm.com/draft to start your free trial. The cheat sheet, you can get Howard Bender's easy-to-use cheat sheet, award-winning analyst Howard Bender, updated throughout the preseason to give you the latest edge on all the rankings, draft advice, top 200 rankings, including rookies, dynasty tiered rankings of all rounds, wherever you're drafting, and, auction drafts. But expert strategies from everyone we got at Fantasy Alarm, the whole fantasy football team that we have there. Just awesome stuff. Expert analysis in the Discord as well for your help during your draft. You can start that 7-day free trial, all pro monthly, and get the cheat sheet for free. Go to fantasyalarm.com/cheat sheet. All right, let's get to our best bets for tonight. What's your top pick here, John?
Yeah, I'm going Rangers here, even though they don't have Josh Jung in that lineup. We're going team total over 5.5 runs. It's plus 105 over on DraftKings Sportsbook. They're going up against the Oakland A's. Ken Waldichuk's on the mound here. I just don't see this Rangers team having any trouble getting off against this A's roster pitching staff, whether it be starter or bullpen here today. So give me the Rangers over 5.5 team runs.
All right. Yeah. Not backing down, even though Jung is out, right?
Yeah, no, not for me. I think Seager in the Dolis and that whole crew is still plenty.
Yeah. It's Walt Chuck on the mound. All right. I'm going with the Marlins. The full game money line in the first 5 innings. Minus 150 on BetMGM for the full game money line. First 5 innings run line is at minus 120 for that half a run favored by. Back in Yuri Perez here, back in the Miami rotation, as we mentioned earlier. He's starting tonight. He's been excellent this year when he was in the big leagues. 2.36 ERA in his 11 starts before he's been in the minors for this past month. I don't know how deep he goes into this game. He was about thrown into the 4th inning in his latest minor league appearance, but all the Marlins top relievers are well rested, so I like that. But either way, I do like the first 5 because Perez will be out there, and the Reds' offense we mentioned they've struggled, but against righties too. Really bad numbers. 298 WOBA and the 78 WRC plus over the past 2 weeks versus right-handed pitching. I think Perez has the stuff to really blank them today, and the relievers behind him will do their thing. On the other side, it's the Reds, getting Brandon Williams in here, 4.85 ERA, and he just coughed up 5 runs his last start against the Cubs. He was solid in July, but those were some of the easier matchups if you kind of look deeper into those numbers and the teams he faced. And the Marlins coming in, top 5 offense all year against left-handed pitching in the better end of their splits here. And over the past week against lefties, 375 WOBA. And those additions of Jake Berger and Josh Bell, I think, have helped. They're not necessarily crushing it, but I think the lineup as a whole is just kind of, a lot more safety around for guys like Jazz Chisholm, Jorge Soler, just to kind of play a little bit better. So, I like the Marlins here going full game in first 5.
Yeah, that's fine. Like you mentioned, the Reds team's a team that's maybe slumping a little bit here. And Yuri Perez, one of the best pitching prospects in that Marlins organization. So kind of capitalize on the momentum. One team going down, one team going up.
Yeah, and both teams, by the way, 3-7 are the last 10 games coming into tonight. So both teams have been struggling in this wild card race, but I think the Marlins will just have the slight upper hand tonight. All right, where else are you going tonight?
Kind of just sticking with the theme of things. Corey Seager over 1.5 total bases. I like tonight, minus 105 on DK Sportsbook. It doesn't actually matter that a lefty's on the mound. Seager is hammering lefties just as much as he is right-handed pitching this season. So at some point, Corey Seager is going to get it done here this evening, going 1.5 total bases.
All right, yeah, he's back in the lineup. I like that. I'm going with the Nationals Phillies over 10. Minus 110 on FanDuel. I like both sides of this. Ranger Suarez has been a guy I've been targeting when he's at home. 5.70 ERA at home this year compared to a 2.76 road ERA. These are splits that kind of continue from last year too. Just kind of some struggles at home, weirdly enough. And he was good in his last start, but in July he had a 6.11 ERA. He's been struggling lately. And the Nats, I mean, we've talked about them a lot. I know you have mentioned targeting them in DFS, but also for betting because this team is just sneaky good, especially against lefties. 335 WOBA overall this year, just in the better end of their splits. They don't strike out a lot. Been tough on lefties all year, but also since the All-Star break, a 347 WOBA. So I think they'll get to Suarez here. And then the other side, the Phillies offense against Trevor Williams. I feel good about this one. Williams has a 6.06 ERA over his last 7 starts. Has some road struggles this year as well. And the Phillies offense has picked it up lately. They kind of went through a slump there, but 346 WOBA against righties over the past week here.
Yeah.
And Williams has faced Philly twice this year, gave up 7 runs over 10 and 2/3 combined innings in those 2 starts. So I think the Phillies will get it done.
Gas can pitcher, that guy, Trevor Williams. Terrible.
The one
Bryce Harper's starting to wake up a little bit, helping that Phillies offense.
Yeah.
So.
Bryce Harper's starting to wake up. Trey Turner is, he had a home run over the weekend, so he's maybe starting to pick it up. But the other guy I like in this game, though, Nick Castellanos, over 1.5 total bases. I'm going with him as well, minus 105 on BetMGM, or minus 105 on DraftKings and BetMGM.
Yeah.
But really good career numbers against Williams in his career. 393 batting average in that with 2 homers and 4 doubles, 11 for 28. So good enough sample size that I feel good about that. And he's been over this 1.5 total bases in 4 of his last 6 games coming into tonight. 7-game hit streak for him as well. And I mentioned Williams, just some poor numbers and a 305 batting average allowed on the road this year.
Yep. He has not been very good. I got a couple others here. We'll go Matt Olson over 1.5 total bases, minus 110 on DraftKings Sportsbook. Again, he's got 39 homers on the year. He leads the National League in home runs. Could easily do it on one swing. We like Atlanta as a team here tonight against Pittsburgh. With Beto on the mound for them there. So he's a guy that is struggling against left-handed power. So Olson kind of just fits the bill to get the over 1.5 total bases for me here tonight. I mentioned liking Seager over. I also like, obviously, Ken Waldichuk over 2.5 earned runs. That's minus 115 on DraftKings Sportsbook. And then we'll go another stolen base prop here. Bobby Witt over the half a stolen base at plus 215.
Ooh, yeah. The stolen base king over here, Jon Impemba.
I like him. I like going after him here. He's been running like a madman of late with his current hot stretch.
Yeah, he's hitting really well lately. Been lighting it up. And right on that point, I'll go with the Royals here. I like their team total over 3.5, minus 145 on DraftKings. Brayan Bello, this is fading your Boston guy here, but I just, Bayo's got, his numbers are weird because he's had some decent outings, but he's also got an expected ERA at 4.14, a FIP at 4.40. So very much like some of those underlying metrics, a little bit worrisome. But the Royals just hammering right-handed pitching lately. Witt's a big part of that, but over the past 2 weeks, 351 WOBA, 285 batting average, 121 WRC plus. I just saw them face the Phillies this past weekend, my Phillies, and they lit it up every single game.
Friday's DFS show, I was touting the Royals. Michael Massey was like 2,300. We had Bobby Witt in our lineup. Massey homers, Witt homers, and has a stolen base. It was a cashing night for us over in the DFS streets because everything you were saying, I'm like, one, Aaron Nola's been wildly inconsistent, and then Kansas City has been like slowly, sneakily getting a little bit better here. They have guys like Salvi Perez who hit power. Melendez home the other day. So I'm with you. I think the Royals are just going to be like a bad team that can be fruitful for taking some of their overs. So.
Yeah, I considered their run line and their money line tonight against the Red Sox too, but just kind of sticking to the offense. I think the other side's Cole Reagans against the Red Sox.
Reagans threw 6 shutout in his last start.
He was good.
I don't know, man.
Yeah, that's why I thought about it, but also just sticking to the offense here because also Bayo 6.55 ERA over his last 4 starts. He's been struggling lately, and he's
lefties are actually hammering Brayan Bello this year too. So I kind of like Massey. I looked at like Massey's home run prop today, but it wasn't as appealing as you would think it would be for a guy like Michael Massey. I think it was like 300 or something like that. Like it's not good, or it's not as high as I would have expected it to be for a long shot play.
Yeah, I'm glad you throw out the Witt stolen base because I looked at some of his props too. I didn't put any in here, but yeah, like you could look at maybe his total bases, his hits, runs, RBIs as well, because I think he'll have a big part of this. So, yeah, I mean, 3.5 just seems maybe a run too low. It's the Royals, that's why it is that low, but I get it.
Yeah, Fenway's a good hitting park too, so get a little ballpark boost for them there.
Then my last pick before we get to some home run calls for tonight. I mentioned earlier, fading Kodai Senga here, under 17.5 outs. I mean, not total fade, but I just don't think he's going to go so deep into this. One note for this is that this is he's pitching on 4 days rest, which is only his 3rd time he's doing it this year. And his first 2 times he did it, he threw 5 innings and then 2 2/3 innings. So he's under this in both of those. Overall this year, the 17.5 outs line, he's been under it in 11 of 20 starts and 4 of the last 7 coming into tonight. But this is like also just kind of backing the Cubs here, hammering righties, as I mentioned, just dominating right-hand pitching. 420 WOBA over the past week, 295 ISO, a high walk rate at 11%, a low strikeout rate at 18%. Yeah. And Senga, we were talking about earlier, impressive 2.40 ERA at home, but his FIP is at 3.55 at home as well. Low BABIP, high left on base rate. And for this matchup specifically, it helps that the Cubs have already faced Senga earlier this year, and he went only 5 innings in that game. allowed 3 runs, 5 walks, 6 hits allowed.
The
So
walks are the biggest issue for
he's had some walk issues most starts this year, but also lately, and did it against the Cubs. So I think the Cubs will make him work here. I think the under 17.5 outs is a good spot.
Yeah, I like that one there. We mentioned Trevor Story earlier. Alex Cora reporting he'll be activated tomorrow. So Trevor Story will be with the Red Sox for Tuesday. So
how's he been hitting in AAA? Do you know?
Really well.
Okay.
I think that's why he wanted to finish out his rehab stat. He was hitting for a lot of power there. I'll pull up the actual numbers, but
you'll be on the show with me tomorrow. I might have to dive into a Trevor Story prop. Just game back.
313 with 3 homers in 10 games on 1100 OPS. So.
All right. Yeah, I don't know who they're facing the Royals again. They're playing Brady Singer. I'll probably go with the prop for Trevor Story.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Let's finish things up with some home run predictions for tonight. Our daily dingers for Monday.
And that baby is gone.
Now that's a dinger.
All right, who you got going deep tonight, John?
Yeah, I got a little long shot play here. We're going to go Nolan Jones plus 550 on DraftKings Sportsbook going up against Freddie Peralta. Like that you get the Rockies in Milwaukee here tonight. I mean, if you're looking for an offensive ballpark that isn't Coors Field, that may be conducive there. Miller Park or where the Brewers play, whatever they call it now these days, is definitely a spot. Freddie Peralta is a guy that's already given up 18 home runs in 21 starts this season. Nolan Jones is a power hitter from the left side who's had a lot of success against right-handed pitching from a power perspective here. So give me Jones at the plus 550 here.
Nice. They're calling it American Family Field these days.
Yeah. Go from a beer park to a family field. So there you go.
Got to be family friendly there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, I'm going Jake Berger plus 235 on DraftKings. Not great odds, but I just think he's going to do it here. I mentioned I like the Marlins overall this game against Brandon Williamson, and Williamson against righties, 507 slug allowed. All 12 of his homers have come to right-handed hitters, and Berger's versus lefties. He's got a 635 slug this year, 388 ISO against lefties as well. 9 homers against lefties this season overall. He homered on Saturday for Miami. He's been up and down since joining the Marlins, but 5 homers in his last 10 games overall since going back to when he was with Chicago. So, give me Berger to go deep.
I like it. Again, a lot of power in that bat. And you mentioned the lefty on the mound there for Cincinnati. I mean, that's his wheelhouse. Berger man loves lefties. So.
Yeah, and I love burgers, so yeah, give me burger tonight.
Amen.
All right, so those are our home run calls tonight, and we just gave out a bunch of picks. So if you missed any of those, go back and listen. Some great MLB playoffs futures, discussion from me and John. And if you're playing DFS tonight, stay tuned here. 5 p.m. Eastern, John will be with James Grande, Quick Pitch MLB DFS live show coming at you for an hour. 8 p.m. Eastern, then we got the Pub Trivia Show with Simon, Joey, and Tim from Front Yard Fantasy. And then 9 p.m. Eastern, as always, Monday Night Rants with Edward Grouse here on Monday nights. So stay tuned for all this on Bettor Sports Network, and enjoy your bets and picks tonight. And we'll be back tomorrow, as always, at 4 p.m. Eastern here on Bettor Sports Network. Appreciate you guys joining us here on a Monday afternoon, and we'll catch you tomorrow. See ya.
Bettor Sports Betting on the Bettor Sports Network.